Something in the national mood changed after that tragic incident in Florida, and almost nobody saw it coming. Gun stores across the country lit up, not just with the usual crowd of enthusiasts, but with folks from all walks of life. Young professionals, retirees, former service members, and complete newcomers all started walking through the doors. But here's the twist: they weren't hunting for high-dollar, ultra-tactical rifles this time. So what exactly did President Trump say that flipped the switch? In today's video, we're diving deep into the moment when his remarks sent a ripple across the firearms market, triggering a sharp rise in rifle and pistol sales within mere hours. But make no mistake, this wasn't chaos or fear. This was a shift in mindset. Americans weren't racing toward flashy gear or souped-up pistols. They went straight for dependable, no-nonsense guns, the kind that don't attract heat from the anti-gun crowd. What followed was a wave of quiet readiness that's growing by the day. From simple, classic carbines to clean-cut handguns, and a rising buzz online about what shooters are now calling Trump-proof firearms. We're unpacking the sudden change in buying behavior. You'll learn why these specific guns are flying off the shelves, how folks are staying within legal limits while keeping politicians off their backs, and what all this signals about the next chapter in the fight for the Second Amendment. This isn't about panic. This is about planning for the long haul. It all kicked off on April 17th, a quiet Thursday at Florida State University, until tragedy hit. Shots rang out inside the Student Union building. 2 people lost their lives, 7 more were hurt. Within minutes, news anchors were scrambling and the country looked to Washington for answers. Journalists found President Trump in the Oval Office. He paused, then delivered a message that echoed across every gun counter in America. I have a responsibility to protect the Second Amendment. I campaigned on that promise and I'm sticking to it. Firearms aren't the problem, people are. While many expected a moment of regret, what they got instead was resolve. And that bold stance electrified the gun community. Almost instantly, online firearm marketplaces slowed to a crawl. Dealers put up out-of-stock notices. Local gun shops were hit with a question that hadn't been heard since 2020. What can I get today that won't be outlawed tomorrow? And the answer wasn't some high-speed, laser-equipped race gun. Buyers skipped over the custom rails, flashy optics, and mall ninja gear. They went for clean, reliable, time-tested rifles and handguns, firearms a working-class parent could afford. And a first-time owner could learn to shoot safely. This wasn't about gearing up for battle. It was about securing peace of mind with something solid and unobtrusive. On forums like AR15.com and Reddit's r/firearms, one term kept showing up: Trumpproof. It became a label for firearms that stay under the radar, guns that comply with restrictive laws, while still getting the job done. By nightfall, the term stuck. According to data from guns.com, 5 models rose straight to the top: the no-frills ATI Milsport carbine, Springfield's user-friendly Echelon, the rugged Glock 19X, the wallet-friendly Konik Meat MC9, and the forged steel SDS Imports Teases 1911 in the classic government configuration. None of them needed upgrades, none came with gimmicks, and every one of them dodged the cosmetic features politicians loved to ban. Leading the pack was the ATI Milsport. It's about as stripped down as a modern rifle can get: iron sights, fixed muzzle device, and a real-world price below $500. That simplicity struck a nerve with cautious parents, new shooters, and folks who'd been sitting on the fence due to the political climate. It didn't scream tactical, but it was dependable enough for home defense or clearing varmints on the property. Range instructors from Georgia to Montana reported beginner classes packed with Milsport owners, manuals in hand, learning every detail like it was their first serious tool. Hot on its heels was the Springfield Echelon. This pistol found its audience fast, especially among women, senior citizens, and new shooters who wanted something controllable but effective. It offered smooth recoil, easy handling, and plenty of capacity. Firearms instructors kept hearing the same thing from students. They weren't just buying a gun, they were taking on the responsibility that comes with it. Trump's speech wasn't just talk. It resonated. Then came the surprise player, the Teases 1911. This full-size .45 caliber handgun, patterned after John Browning's original design, offered an all-steel frame and rock-solid construction. It came in at a fraction of the cost of custom 1911s. And buyers loved it. It shot straight, felt right, and connected veterans and traditionalists alike to a piece of American history. Gunbroker listings showed a massive jump in sales almost overnight. Sure, some critics knocked it for being made in Turkey, but the people who bought them weren't worried about the country of origin. They were chasing quality at a working man's price. Now, you might hear some folks laugh it off, calling it nostalgia or knee-jerk buying. But from where I stand, this looks like smart strategy. These buyers didn't reach for something loud or trendy. They went with what works. Guns that function. Guns that won't be outlawed next election cycle. Guns you can clean on a workbench next to your toolbox. Not locked in a case for fear of legal gray areas. And that's what the term Trump-proof has come to mean. Rugged, affordable, no-drama firearms that keep you legal without giving up effectiveness. They're built for staying power. They're built for the long game. Glock's 19X saw a major boost, but for reasons that had little to do with marketing flash. Its hybrid build, marrying a full-size frame to a compact slide, proved just as suitable for duty holsters as it was for concealed carry inside the waistband. Feeding from standard 17-round magazines and backed by decades of parts availability, it became a no-brainer for anyone wanting reliability. Retired officers picked them up as trustworthy sidearms. Parents bought them for their adult kids, knowing they'd avoid legal hang-ups or compatibility issues. What really stood out? Customers weren't just asking about capacity or recoil, they were talking optics bans, threaded barrel crackdowns, and looming restrictions. Even with all that, they chose the 19X anyway, because it walks the tightrope of modern regulation without giving up practical features. At the same time, the iconic Meat MC9 made a serious leap from niche status to mainstream staple almost overnight. From the factory, it came optics ready, sported one of the best stock triggers in its class, and rang at around $600. Suddenly, it wasn't just range rats paying attention, it was suburban buyers in swing state neighborhoods who were fed up with uncertainty. In the glove box, it looked mild. But with 15 rounds, great ergos, and serious accuracy, it delivered far more than it cost. It even earned a nickname online, the MAGA Meat. Sure, part joke, but there was truth in the punchline. People wanted something that shot straight, didn't break the bank, and wouldn't trigger red flags under new legal definitions. So why did so many Americans skip the decked-out ARs and pricey imports, opting instead for more modest, straightforward tools? A big part of it comes down to history. We've seen this play out before. After the Sandy Hook tragedy, anything with a rail system or adjustable stock flew off the shelves. When the unrest of 2020 hit, every 12-gauge pump in stock disappeared. Each time, panic buying led to public outcry, sensational headlines, and proposals for sweeping bans. But this time, folks didn't wait for the rush, they got ahead of it. They picked tools that would perform if needed, without drawing attention from pundits or politicians. A plain-looking pistol or carbine might not make magazine covers, but it won't end up on the 6 o'clock news either. There was a deeper layer too. As families across the country watched the horrific events unfold at Florida State University, they saw familiar media narratives start to form. They heard the same tired blame placed on inanimate objects rather than motive or intent. They remembered how quickly politicians had tried to push sweeping restrictions in past tragedies. And then President Trump's clear stance came through his firm support for the Second Amendment. For many, that moment wasn't just reassuring, it was galvanizing. It reminded them that the right to keep and bear arms needs to be exercised while it's still intact. Not out of fear, but out of principle. What followed didn't look like a buying frenzy, it looked like people finally getting off the sidelines. Range instructors started seeing fresh faces. Middle-aged men and women handling rifles for the first time. Married couples booking joint training sessions. Grandparents practicing dry fire so they could confidently guide the next generation. These weren't doomsday preppers or social media stunt shooters. They were thoughtful, deliberate citizens investing in skills they may have ignored for too long. Sales data backed it up. Basic AR receivers moved consistently, while the flashy, skeletonized models and rapid-fire gadgets gathered dust. Folding braces, binary triggers, and anything that smelled like a reclassification risk stayed in the cabinet. Meanwhile, pump shotguns, once pushed aside by tactical autos, made a quiet comeback. One gun store manager compared it to what happens during a gas shortage. Flashy rides get parked, and folks start valuing old trucks that just keep running. When the future's unclear, utility wins. Commentators on TV blasted the president's statement, calling it reckless. But what they missed is this: the firearms Americans chose in the aftermath weren't the ones making headlines. They were simple, proven, low-profile tools, guns built to function without drawing political fire. No skull graphics, no oversized rails, just phosphate-coated carbines and fixed stocks, like something from a late 1990s training manual. And that plain Jane appearance? That's what makes them politically resilient. They're hard to demonize when they look like something your sheriff's department has been using for 2 decades. Politicians care about visuals. Back in 1994, the assault weapons ban targeted bayonet lugs and flash hiders not because they changed performance, but because they look scary to the average voter. But in 2025, the same kind of rifles minus the cosmetic flourishes flew under the radar. And gun buyers? They noticed. When given the choice between slick aluminum rails and plain polymer handguards, many opted for the latter. They wanted their firearms to look like tools, not props. That same instinct drove people toward iron sights over slick gas blocks. In this climate, simplicity isn't just smart, it's a form of protection. Critics still argue that more guns equal more danger. But the April numbers tell another story. Police reports didn't show a spike in accidental discharges or reckless behavior. Instead, community clinics saw packed CPR and stop the bleed classes. People weren't just buying gear, they were learning how to use it responsibly. In some towns, local churches and gun ranges teamed up to host safety workshops, something you wouldn't have imagined a decade ago. Market analysts confirmed it. Sales of the top 5 so-called Trumpproof guns exploded, jumping by nearly 500% in just 10 days after the president's Oval Office address. That may not match the jaw-dropping 800% spike seen in previous panics, but this time was different. The climb wasn't chaotic, it was measured, purposeful. Distributors rushed to resupply local dealers, but prices didn't budge. Why? Because these firearms are backed by steady American manufacturing and long-term import pipelines. That pricing consistency sent a powerful signal to buyers. This wasn't reactionary hoarding, it was a smart, deliberate investment. Now let's be honest, no gun is truly immune to future regulation. Even old-school wheel guns have been banned in certain states. But there's power in unity. When average Americans start leaning into low-key rifles and pistols that look like hand-me-downs from a cattle ranch, rather than props from an action movie, they build a base of support that's tough to tear down. Every Springfield Kuna or Kinetic Meat MC 9 someone oils on the workbench isn't just a personal defense tool. It's one more voice ready to call Congress, vote at the ballot box, and show up at town hall meetings. Every responsible gun owner adds momentum to the movement. Even on the Florida State University campus, reactions were more complex than expected. While many students gathered to mourn and call for change, others quietly joined trap and skeet clubs. For some, that kind of trauma doesn't push them toward disarmament, it drives them to take security into their own hands. When a president draws a clear line in support of the Second Amendment, Americans don't just hear approval. They hear a call to action, a green light to buy lawfully and a duty to train, to carry with purpose, and to store their firearms responsibly. What we're seeing here goes deeper than sales spikes. This is a cultural turning point. President Trump's message didn't just defend a constitutional amendment, it sparked a nationwide return to readiness. Look around and you'll see it. Electricians are picking up basic carbines right along with their backup generators. Dental assistants are skipping that designer handbag and choosing a polymer frame pistol instead. Grandparents are passing on dessert so they can afford a couple extra boxes of ammunition for the weekend range trip with their grandkids. These quiet choices may never make headlines, but they'll echo far longer than anything said on cable news. And folks aren't going in blind, they're thinking 2 steps ahead. They know the political winds can shift with the next election. That's why today's buyers are sticking with classic calibers like .223 Remington, 9mm Luger, and .45 ACP. They're buying guns that share magazines and accessories, platforms with decades of aftermarket support, and gear that works whether you live in a red state or a blue one. They're also brushing up on safe storage and carry laws, making sure they're not just armed, but compliant and confident. Sure, critics argue that once the heat dies down, those guns will just collect dust. But so far, the data says otherwise. Shooting ranges that expanded their weekday hours say every lane stays packed. Ammunition suppliers report steady demand for full metal jacket rounds, not panic runs, but consistent buying. Dry fire drills at home and structured range sessions are becoming regular routines. This isn't a fleeting trend. It's a shift in mindset. Firearms ownership is becoming less of a niche hobby and more of a life skill, right up there with knowing CPR or how to change a flat tire. Whether lawmakers double down or back off remains to be seen. But here's what's certain: each ATI mil sport stowed behind a bedroom door, and every Meat MC9 secured in a discreet bedside safe, stands for something bigger. These aren't just tools, they're proof of a promise. They're what it looks like when citizens respond to leadership not with panic, but with preparation. That line, "the people do," hit home for a reason. Because when the people moved, they didn't act irrationally. They picked practical, compliant, and dependable firearms. Quiet tools, serious intent. So now you know what really happened after President Trump restated his commitment to the Second Amendment. American gun owners didn't run to the flashiest gear or the scariest silhouette. They chose wisely, going with reliable carbines, proven pistols, and common caliber workhorses that balance utility with legal safety. They didn't act out, they leaned in. Now the question is, which of these so-called Trump-proof firearms would earn a place in your lineup? Are you seeing the same kind of shift where you live at your local shop or range? Drop a comment down below and share your thoughts. If this video gave you a new way to think about readiness, hit that like button. Send it to a friend and make sure you're subscribed. Ring the bell so you never miss an update, because, trust me, this conversation is just beginning.